Okay, let's talk a little bit about file input output. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio 2013. I'm going to start a new project. And of course, this is going to be a C++ project, Win32 application, console application. And over here, I'm going to type in CS225. And today's date is the 8th. And I'll put FileIO. IO stands for input output. I'll just put FileIO project. Click OK. This is going to be an empty project. Click Finish. And then now I have to create a C++ file. So we'll go over here to Source Files, C++, add a new item, C++ file. It's going to call it Source. That's OK. Click Add. And we'll start adding items like IOStream using namespace, int main, system pause, return 0. Of course, we have our comments, so we'll say declarations, get user input, calculation, and then output. Now, if we're going to be working with strings, then of course I'm going to have to include the string library, so I'll do that here. And if we're going to be working with input-output to files, then you have to include fstream. Now, what fstream does, it's a library that allows you or gives you the tools to be able to establish an internal representation of an external file. So for example, let's say that I want to create a file called input.txt, and I want to create another one called output.txt. And I want to be able to read information from one and write information to the other. If that's the case, that line of communication is dealt with in this library called fstream. F stands for file, file stream. What is a stream? Yeah, so I want to create a file called input.txt, and I'll create another file called output.txt. If I want to communicate with those two files, then I have to use fstream, file stream. Because when you are inputting information, you are writing. When you are obtaining information, or I'm sorry, when you are changing the information on the file, then you are writing. And when you are reading, that means you're obtaining information from the file. So that means stream, either in one or two directions. You're either reading from or writing to a file. And so I'm going to go into that in a more elaborate way. So let's do this. Let's open up Notepad. So let me go over here and let's see if I can open up Notepad. There it is, Notepad. And in this Notepad, I'm going to read, or I type in rather, Robert Solis. Why don't you type in your first and last name? Okay. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to obtain this information. I'd like to obtain the information in this file. So now I'm going to save this file as input.txt. Here's the thing though. Where do you save this? Okay, so temporarily, let me just leave this right here. I'm not saving it yet. I'm going to switch back over here to Visual Studio. I want to make sure to click Save As. When you, Save All, I should say. This button right here is Save All. When you save your project, you are actually creating this in a directory. Let me prove this to you. So I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to minimize this temporarily. I'm going to open up File Explorer. They call it File Explorer here in Windows 10. I'm used to calling it Windows Explorer, right? That's what we used to call it in the previous Windows versions. It's the idea of exploring the hard drive. If I go to Documents, and then if I go to Visual Studio, and then within Visual Studio, if I go to Projects, I get a listing of all my projects. Let me sort them in accordance to date, and you'll see here's the one that I just created, CS225 090815 FileIO project. If I double click here, And then I have another folder that's exactly the same name. So here I am, Visual Studio, Projects, CS225. Here's another folder, CS225. So I'm in that subfolder. Ah, there's my source file. All of your input and output files should be located at the same path as your source.cpp file. Okay. Now, do they have to be? No, because I can enter in path information that says this file is located on C::desktop/ source.cpp, or I'm sorry, input.txt. So I could put it on the desktop. I could put it in the pictures folder. I could refer to the file anywhere on the hard drive. It's just for our purposes, to make it easy. What we'll do is we'll save all of our input and output files at the same location as your source.cpp file. Then it doesn't have to look anywhere. You don't have to give it a specific path. It knows that the files that you will be working with are located next to where the source file, or in the same path as the source file. So what does that mean? Well, let me go back over here to Notepad. I am now ready to save this. So you're going to go to File, Save As. We're going to save this text file specifically in this folder location. All right. So I got to go over here to Documents, and then I'm going to scroll down, and here's Visual Studio 2013. And if you're wondering where am I, up here. I'll open this up a little bit. This is where I'm located. Within here, I have to go into the Projects folder. Within the Projects folder, I'm going to locate the project that I'm currently working on. So I'm in this list view right now, so I'm going to click Date Modified so I go into the correct folder. It looks like it's this one right here. CS225-090815 FileIO project. I'll double click into this folder. And then I get another folder with that exact same name. I'll double click into this subfolder. Finally, I am in the location where that source file is located, as I just shared with you in the Windows Explorer file. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll change this to input. Now, I don't have to put the .txt. In fact, I would recommend that you don't, because it's already going to give it the name, or the extension rather, .txt. So I'm just going to call this my input file. Yes? So make sure that you click Save All, because when you click Save All, then you'll have that. So let me show you what I'm talking about.
Isn't that supposed to say source though? Because it just says file project.
Remember, this is Notepad.
Oh, Notepad.
Yeah, so in Notepad, I got to give it a name. In terms of, we go back over here to Windows Explorer. In terms of Windows Explorer, when I go to Documents, Visual Studio Projects, when I save all, it's going to save this, it's going to save this, and then you should see, because you created your source file, if you created your source file, you should see source.cpp. For example, if I go back over here, and let me just do this temporarily. I would never do this at this stage, at least. Let me call, okay, source.1, okay, add. Let me click Save All, and then I'm going to go back over here to File Explorer, and you'll see there's source.1. Okay. So wherever this thing is located, that's where you want to save your input and output files. Now, I don't want that source one, so I will go back over here and save it, yeah. And let's remove. And I want to delete. So now I go back over here, and now the source one is gone. Yeah, so back in Notepad, when you're doing File, Save As, you're going to go into Documents, Visual Studio, Projects, the name of the folder, the second subfolder that has that same name. Now you won't see, now if I click this, if I click All Files, there's the source file. But I don't want to save this as anything other than a text file. That's why you don't see it, because it's filtered. You're going to name that file Input, and when you click Save, if I were to go back to the File Explorer, you'll see that Input is right here. Here's your source file. So the whole moral of the story here is all of your input and output files must be located at this stage of the game. They don't have to be, but to make life easier for us in class, I'm going to recommend you put all of them inside the folder where your source file .cpp is. Okay? All right.
Wait a minute, so you said put them in the folder, so were you talking like drag and drop?
This folder right here. Yeah, I mean, you could drag and drop, but in terms of Notepad, you're just going to save as.
Right above.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just going to save as. And put it into the folder where the source file is. Or save it. Okay. Let's go back over here to our C++ program. I'm going to go ahead and declare a string. So that's going to be name. Because my idea is, let's capture the person's name in the input file. And let's add to it. Let's add some content to it. Now, whenever you want to establish a line of communication with an external file, you have to set up an in file or in stream or an outstream file. So what we'll do is this. We'll say if stream read from file. OF stream write to file. Input file stream, output file stream. That's what the IF stream and the OF stream stand for. In other words, I am about to input information from this file. So let's stream the data. Let's read the data from this file. Well, we already know what that is. It's going to be Robert Solis. We're going to get that data. And so this right here is simply allowing us to have a line of communication. This is as if I give you a walkie-talkie. So I give you a walkie-talkie, but it's broken. This walkie-talkie that I'm going to give to you has the ability to hear information. And then this walkie-talkie, it's broken. Only the button works where you can talk into it. Okay? So that's what you've been given. You've been given a kind of a broken walkie-talkie that allows you to listen or to read, and another one that allows you to speak or to write to. Technically speaking, we call this RX and TX. TX stands for transmit, RX stands for receive, right? So you'll see those two letters in the industry indicating reading or writing or receiving or transmitting. So what this is a representation of an external file. That's what we need it to be. So over here in the get user input, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to say read from file dot open parens and then whatever the name of that file is, input.txt. Don't forget the semicolon at the end. What is the name of the external file? It's input.txt. You just created it via Notepad. Now, what is the internal representation of that external file? Read from file. So what this thing does is it says, we're not going to call it input.txt. We're going to call it read from file. This means wherever this thing is located. Now, where is this thing located? Well, according to our file, according to a File Explorer, this thing is located on the C drive in this PC in Documents, in Visual Studio, so forth and so on. Finally, it drills down to where the file is located. Now, if I wanted to, I could say this thing is located at a specific path. But because I placed this input file at the same location as my source file, I don't have to have any path information. That's why I say put your input file where your source file is, because then that's all you have to do. You don't have to do something like this: C:// documents / my documents / homework / so forth and so on. You don't have to create a path. All you're doing is just simply indicating what the file name is because you put it in the same location as your source file. All right. When we finish, we want to be able to write information to a file. So we're going to take that write to file object. Again, open. And I'm going to create a file called output.txt. If I go back to File Explorer, you don't see output.txt. We are going to create it at the execution of this program. So you see right now, all I've done is I've created input, and input has inside of it this, right? Here's a preview, has Robert Solis in it. But there is no output file.
Yeah, but isn't it going to tell you that you haven't declared your variable or something like that?
Nope. No, because what this is doing is it's saying, establish a line of communication with a file. by the way, the name of that file is this. So I have established, we don't call it declaration, but I have established a line of communication with an output file. That's what this thing does. I've also established a line of communication with the input file. The output file, we're going to create that in just a moment. All right, so let's do this then. I'm going to go over here, hit enter a couple times. I'm going to enter a new comment, read the entire line. We're going to read the entire line of text, namely Robert, space, and also Solis. Now, allow me to make a mistake first so that you can see what this looks like. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to say cin, and I'm going to put this into name. Let's see here. Actually, let me do it this way. Not cin. Read, sorry. Read from file. And I'm going to put this into name. And I'm going to stop the code right here. Run the program. Okay, so we have a line of communication to a file, and over here it's it's established where that memory is located, also where the file for writing to the file is located. I'm about to put something into name. As you can see here, name is blank. So let me step over, and when I step over, notice that just the word Robert is captured. So let me stop the program. Go back over here to the file. Just this part was captured. So what happens is C++ is going to use white space as a terminal value. What is the definition of white space? White space is the space bar. White space can be the tab button. White space can be the return key. So for example, if I said enter two numbers, wouldn't you do this? Wouldn't you put 3 and 4 and not like this? That looks like 34, doesn't it? But what you meant was, oh, here are my two numbers. And so how do you distinguish them? You put a what in between?
Underscore.
A space. A space. Or I could do this. I could say enter two numbers. Okay, 3, enter 4. Or I could do this, 3, tab 4. So what I'm saying is the tab, the space bar, the enter key, we call that in C++ programming, actually in any program, we call that white space. And white space simply means that which distinguishes this first value from the second value. So what are the keys that do that? Tab, space bar, and enter. Typically, what do you say to the user? Enter your first and last name. Okay, Robert, enter Solis, or maybe Robert, space bar, Solis, or maybe Robert, tab, Solis. Any of those distinguishes the values. But if I do this, if I type in, say for example, enter two numbers, okay, 3 and 4. Well, that's 34. How do I distinguish between those two? I have to put some sort of white space in between. Let me get rid of that and go back over here to my program. That's why we have a problem with this approach. We can't just simply say, okay, get the data from this file, because it's only going to get the first item before it sees or detects a white space. So what we'll do is this. Let me get rid of this, and we'll type the following. Get line. So what do you think get line does? Gets the entire line. And we're going to put this into name. Now this is different. What this says is get the entire line of text from this input file.txt and put the entire contents into name. So again, let me stop the program right here and run it. And let's investigate what it looks like. Okay, so we've stopped the code. Name is nothing. It's blank right now, as it should be. After this line is executed, let's see what's happening. So let me click step over, and now notice Robert space Solis is now being assigned to name. And that's the beauty of getLine. Okay, so as I stop my code right here, notice that it's obtained both words. Let me stop the program and just go back over here. Sorry, let me go back to Notepad. works at Citrus College. Save this. Go back over here, run the program again. It's going to stop it. Name does not have any content, but when I step over, now notice that name has the text, Robert Solis works at Citrus College. So whatever is inside of your text file, we can now grab all of that information. Let me save this. We can now grab all of that information with the usage of getLine. Yes? Okay, that's a good question. Let's try that. Let's experiment. So let's see here. Let me go back over here. Joshua James. Save my file. And let me run the program, and I'll stop it right here again. Name is blank. Let's see what happens after I execute or step over. So it looks like it's Robert Solis. So does getLine get all of the lines? getLine gets a single line. Yeah. So at this point, I have Joshua James dangling in the output file, but it's still there ready for me to capture. So this just gets one line. Yes?
How can you tell the computer's automatically get like a specific line? That gets a little first one, right?
That's right. So we are literally going to be filling up a buffer that says, this is what the getLine, this is what's so cool about getLine. What it does is it says, okay, I have obtained the first line, which is Robert Solis, but I haven't obtained the second line yet. So there's a demarcation built into getLine knowing how far it has obtained. Now the next, I'm going to show you another chunk of code within a while statement where, okay, let's get the next line. And now let's get the next line. So we have end of line markers, and we have also what's referred to as end of file markers. So how do you know the end of a particular line? What do you press on your keyboard to go to the next line? Yeah, so that's the end of line marker. So that's what getLine does. getLine says, oh, I know how much I'm supposed to get. It's until I read where that enter key has been pressed. So technically speaking, that is ASCII character number 13 and also ASCII character number 11. When you press enter on the keyboard, what are you doing? You are going to the beginning of the next line. Okay? So when you go to the beginning of the next line, character 13 means go carriage return. So on the old typewriters, when you push this handle, the carriage would rotate, and you would go like this to go to the beginning of the next line. So line feed and carriage return are taking place when you press enter. That's how getLine knows that you've reached the end of a particular line, because you pressed enter. Good. Answer your question? Good question. Okay, so let me go. Oh, I keep on doing this. Oh, my program's open here. Go back over here. All right, so let me stop the program over here, getLine, and I'm going to go back and fix this guy over here. I just want my first name like this. Let me save. Go back over here. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to add the word hello to the name that I just obtained. So name, which is a string, as you can see over here, it's a string that I've declared. Or if you want to see more specifically, here it is, the string that you declared earlier. So name is going to be assigned the word hello, space. I'm going to concatenate that with whatever the actual name is, what actually the person's actual name is. Sorry about that, plus symbol. So this is going to be a concatenation of this word hello and the person's name. This is not the addition operator in this context. This is the concatenation operator. Okay, so now I am ready to send this to the file. Now let me go back over here to the File Explorer just to prove something to you. In File Explorer, okay, so here's the output file over here. It looks like it's blank. I'm going to get rid of it on purpose. Delete it. Okay, so no output file, as you can see here. It's going to generate the output file again, but this time I want to send hello Robert Solis to that output file. So what I'll do is this, write to file, whatever name is. So remember, we used to use the word cout and I would say cout, and then we would have this operator over here that would display this information to the output. Well, now we are going to take this information and write it, or display it if you want to this output file. So it's the same thing in terms of outputting something, but the question is, where are you going to output it? Here, we're going to be outputting it to a specific file. What specific file? Output.txt. All right. Now, so let's see what happens here. We are going to write this information. Before I run the program, let me just remind you of something that my mom and my dad always used to say to me and my brother when we were little kids. We'd run out from the house to the backyard and play, and we'd leave the back door open. And my mom would always say, hey, do you live in a barn? Close the door. So anything that you open, you must close. Because if you don't close it, you are allowing Windows to use those memory resources for a program that may have closed and you're not even using it. So anything that you have used, you have to let the Windows operating system say, okay, I'm finished with my program, let me give this memory back to you. Okay? It's like you going to the bowling alley, right? You take a couple of these bowling shoes, you're renting them, and if you just leave them there, where you're bowling, well, they're not going to know where those shoes are. You got to give them back. You got to give those resources back. So over here, we're going to create read line or read from file dot close write to file close. Anything that you open, you must close. So what a lot of programmers do is when they create this input file stream and output file stream, they will also automatically generate this because programmers forget all the time. What the close statement does is to free up those resources back to the Windows operating system when your program is finished. So I'm going to run the program. Press any key to continue. It doesn't look like a whole lot happened, but if I were to go back over here to the File Explorer, notice that output was created, and notice what it did. It sent hello Robert Solis, because that's what this program is supposed to do. This program is supposed to obtain the name from the user input file. Well, what do we have in the input file? I have over here Robert Solis. And so what we do is we obtain that data. I append hello to that. So now it's going to say hello Robert Solis. And I'm going to send that to a file, internal representation, write to file, which is really the output file. And that over here has hello Robert Solis. So let me run the program again. But let me change this input file. So let me go back over here to Notepad. And let me put Joshua James. Save my file. Okay, so the output file says hello Robert Solis, but my input file now says Joshua James. So now let's see what happens when I run the program again. So I run the program, press any key to continue, go back over here to File Explorer. The output used to say hello Robert Solis. Now it says hello Joshua James. Okay, so that's either a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing in that we now know how to write data to files, but it could be a bad thing in that it just overwrote what was previously on there. You may not want that. You may want, remember this old data, just push it down and put the new hello Joshua James. Take the hello Robert, hello Joshua James, put that down, hello Jackson Paul, and so forth and so on, right? You may want to just be pushing information down and appending to the output file. This is not doing that. What this is doing is overriding the output file based on whatever information that I have inside the input file.
How do you tell the computer to